Today, I am announcing the normalization of diplomatic relationships with Vietnam.
The U.S. wants to deepen its relations with Vietnam. The once warring countries already share strong trading ties.
The United States and Vietnam were both greatly impacted by the lessons gained and losses sustained during the Vietnam War. U.S. participation in the war ended on March 29, 1973, when forces were finally pulled out after years of bloody warfare and staggering deaths. Although the Vietnam War left a bitter legacy, the United States and Vietnam have grown closer over the years. Both nations have made great strides in developing a mutually beneficial relationship based on shared interests in regional stability and economic growth. In this video, we will investigate the background of the United States and Vietnam's relationship, tracing the complex route from enmity to friendship. We will also take a look at where things stand between the two countries now. This involves their continuous economic cooperation and their attempts to keep the peace and stability in the area. The road to partnership. Both sides were furious after the Vietnam War ended in 1975. But the United States was particularly upset since the war had divided the nation and cost countless lives and resources. Vietnam was cut off from the rest of the world in the years after the war due to the lack of diplomatic ties between the two nations. Vietnam's political and economic stability were severely disrupted with the fall of Saigon in 1975. The Vietnamese Communist Party was in charge, and its policies sought to wipe out any remaining traces of the previous administration so that they could establish a firm grip on the nation. As a result, Vietnam went through a period of political persecution and economic incompetence that helped to isolate the country. War had left a harsh history on both sides, and the United States was hesitant to restore diplomatic ties with Vietnam. The United States claimed that Vietnam had failed to live up to its responsibility under the Paris Peace Accords, which had officially ended the war in 1973. As a consequence, Washington placed a trade embargo on Vietnam that lasted until 1994. Vietnam had difficulties in gaining international acceptability in addition to U.S. sanctions. Many nations avoided diplomatic and economic ties with Vietnam due to its poor human rights record and lack of political freedom. The invasion of Vietnam by China in 1979 only made matters worse. The Vietnamese leadership saw the United States as a possible partner against China despite the lack of direct U.S. intervention. Vietnamese foreign policy began to evolve gradually after the Chinese invasion made it clear that they could no longer rely on Soviet Union help. Vietnam's foreign policy evolved through time, becoming more autonomous as it sought to strike a better balance between its ties to major countries like China, the Soviet Union, and the United States. In the 1990s and beyond, this laid the framework for better ties with the United States. In the years after the war, Vietnam's economy suffered greatly. The government of Vietnam saw the need of forging diplomatic ties with the United States and other nations in order to help integrate Vietnam into the global economy. It wasn't until the 1990s that Vietnam signed a bilateral trade deal with the United States and allowed the hunt for missing U.S. servicemen. These initiatives laid the basis for the two nations' diplomatic ties to be normalized in 1995. The United States and Vietnam were emphasizing economic cooperation, especially in the fields of trade and investment. The United States' bilateral trade with Vietnam is expected to exceed $90 billion in 2023 and 24. The two nations have also worked together on regional security matters, especially under the Quad Plus organization. Challenges and opportunities. There will be obstacles and possibilities in the future of U.S.-Vietnam relations. Territorial claims in the South China Sea by China, Vietnam, and other nations in the area proves to be a significant barrier. The United States has backed Vietnam's position on these conflicts, and the two nations have held combined naval drills in the area to show their dedication to open seas. Human rights in Vietnam provide yet another difficulty. Vietnam has made significant strides in recent years, but the country's leadership still cracks down on political opposition and free speech, and many worry about how the country treats its ethnic minorities and how independent its courts are. There has been some improvement in human rights due to U.S. pressure on Vietnam, but much more has to be done. Vietnam has made great achievements economically in recent years, and its economy is now among the fastest growing in the world. The United States has been one of Vietnam's most important commercial partners since the nation opened to foreign investment and trade. A bilateral trade agreement was reached between the two nations in 2019, which could encourage more business operations and investment. Vietnam has the ability to expand its influence in the Indo-Pacific region. The United States, Japan, India, and Australia make up the Quad, a strategic alliance. To further address regional security, commerce, and the preservation of the liberal rules-based international order, the Quad Plus has expanded to include other nations in the Indo-Pacific area. Free trade and freedom of passage in the Indo-Pacific are only two of the problems that the organization may help advance by bringing together nations with similar interests. Vietnam is an appealing partner for the Quad Plus because of its strategic position and expanding economy, and it has the potential to play a greater role in this framework. If Vietnam did this, it would help the Quad Plus promote regional peace and development by countering China's expanding influence. There are several upsides to Vietnam participating in the Quad Plus. To begin with, it has the potential to improve Vietnam's safety and stability, especially in the South China Sea, where tensions with China have been rising. Joining the organization will provide Vietnam a greater opportunity to influence regional security arrangements in its favor. Second, the Quad Plus members are among Vietnam's biggest commercial partners and investors, so working together economically would be beneficial for both parties. Vietnam's economic growth may be sped up by joining the grouping and gaining access to more resources. However, Vietnam's membership in the Quad Plus might face certain obstacles. For instance, Vietnam's relationship with China may be strained if Beijing pushes Hanoi to reduce its involvement in the organization. In addition, some Vietnamese citizens may be reluctant to join a coalition that is seen as being headed by the United States because of the country's role in the Vietnam War. It remains to be seen how successful the Quad Plus will be in resisting China's expansion in the area, and the organization is still in its infancy. Overall, the relationship between the United States and Vietnam has improved greatly since the Vietnam War's conclusion. There are certainly obstacles that must be overcome, but there are also several openings for cooperation between the two nations on matters of shared interest and profit. Since the chaotic period of the Vietnam War, the relationship between the United States and Vietnam has improved greatly. The two nations, who were once bitter enemies, are now allies in a cooperative partnership on economic connections and regional security. While progress has been made, there are still obstacles to overcome, such as Vietnam's human rights record, which has strained ties with the United States. Vietnam is a desirable partner for the Quad Plus grouping due to its strategic position and expanding economy, and China's rising influence in the area presents a danger to both nations. The future holds excellent opportunities for the United States and Vietnam to strengthen their partnership via enhanced military exchanges, cultural and educational exchanges, and ongoing economic cooperation. Vietnam has made great advances in recent years, and as its economy expands, it will unquestionably play a more vital role in the area. The United States has a challenging balancing act as it seeks to aid Vietnam's development without violating the country's sovereignty or human rights. The Quad Plus organization might offer a forum for such collaboration and balance China's growing influence in the area. As the relationship between the United States and Vietnam develops, both nations would do well to reflect on the lessons they learned and the costs they paid during the Vietnam War. If the two nations keep talking to each other and work together, they may form a positive alliance that will help the whole Indo-Pacific and the rest of the world. That's all for today, guys. If you like this video, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and press the bell icon for any new updates. See you next one.